Let's move on to two iconic, famous people attending the gym. I'll start with Roy Jones Jr. because I'm going to save the best till last. Roy Jones Jr. rocked up at the gym a few weeks ago, Dom, and one of the things that stood out to me, he said to me, because I interviewed him the next day, and he said like he apologised for not coming here before. He said he's been in Sheffield before, but he never got the chance. He was with somebody that knew where the gym was, and he rocked up. And just tell me, what was it like seeing somebody like Roy Jones just
Well, it's funny because it might have been a weekend, I think, Saturday or something, Friday, and I just got a message off my nephew Luca, who runs the amateurs and does some of the pro training, doing his license next week actually, and he went, "Oh, Roy Jones is in the gym," and I went, "Oh yeah," not like really, or because this is the thing about this gym. Over the years there's been so many famous people just rolling up, so it's kind of, well, all right, yeah, fair enough. He went, "Are you coming over?" I went, "Yeah, I'll come over." So I came over, and he came in with another a kid called Jazz, who came up years ago, and he goes, "Oh, I've been meaning to come back all these years. I came in and Brendan gave me a lot of time, and I've come up with Roy and I brought him to the gym." And Roy pulled up in the car, and my nephew was just leaving, and my nephew went, "Oh, Roy Jones Jr." Now, my nephew was only 18. Now, as famous as Roy is, there won't be a lot of 18-year-olds, who know who he is in boxing. And I think he was quite surprised that he got recognised. Some young kids, obviously, you'd expect older people to. He went, "Yeah, man, that's me." And he came in the gym. And it's great having conversations with the likes of people like Roy Jones, because they've been around for such a long time, and, some great fights. And another story I can remember where I was on a plane going to America. In fact, no, was I going to America or coming back from somewhere or going to America? I'm going to America. And on that plane was Montel Griffin, who beat Roy Jones, but he beat him by a disqualification. And the reason he was on the plane is because he was signed up by Frank Maloney at the time, and I was going somewhere and he was going. So I don't know if he was going to fight. He might have been actually going to fight Roy Jones that time. It might have been the flight he was on, and he was on boxing Roy Jones. And I thought, he's going to get filled in. And then when I saw the result that he beat Roy Jones, I thought, how's that possible? But it was a disqualification, and I think Roy Jones boxed him again and knocked him out in the first round or something. So there's always a connection in a story. But it's interesting talking to Roy Jones, about his career and watching him coming through. And he once wrote Errol Graham a letter saying, "I want to fight you." And Errol was in the gym at the time. And
was that in the days there was no Twitter and Instagram?
And Errol Graham didn't really follow boxing much, but Johnny Nelson did, and he passed the letter to Johnny and said, "Who's this guy?" And Johnny went, "You want to keep away from him. He was in the Olympics. He did this, he did that. He's a dangerous kid coming through." And Errol never heard of him, and that were it. And my brother John came over to talk to Ray, and he said, "I can remember when you sent that letter." He goes, "Yeah, I remember writing the letter to Errol Graham." It just shows you, doesn't it, how everybody's connected. So we had an hour talking and talking about boxing and the fights he'd had, and what a tremendous ambassador for the sport he was.
I tell you what, one of the interesting things that he said that stood out to me, because I watched some obviously footage, and you said to him that your dad copied a move from him, like a certain step that you do, and I asked him about that, and I think quote for quote he basically said that it's a sign of a great man, where you never stop learning till the day you die. And he said obviously your dad, even at that age, was still picking up things from other people and kind of using it in his own style.
Yeah, you've got to realise that with boxing that you're always learning. You can't stick to one style. Even though we've had a training system in this gym for 30 years. It's always, I always like to, I have to laugh sometimes when people come up and say, "Oh, Brendan Ingle nicked Errol Graham's training style." You learn off everybody, you learn off everybody in this gym. Nazim Hamid, who was, a big star in this gym, used to watch Errol Graham every day, but his style was nothing like Errol Graham's, but there were parts of it. And as a trainer, you pick bits and you make bits work, and you get rid of stuff what doesn't work. And I used to have people coming to me saying, "I don't want to come to your gym because you make everybody fight like Nazim Hamid." But nobody fought like Nazim Hamid. We had John Buster Keaton, who was a proper old school throwback, South Orthodox kid, just go in, bash him up, throw bombs in. Nothing like Naz, but he trained during the Naz period. Everybody had their own style. We never forced a style on anybody. Although most fighters we have are trained from both stances. You know, most can box southpaw or orthodox, but when they get in that ring, they do what they need to do best. There are times when you have to get them switching. Like Kell Brook was a very good switch hitter before he left and went to Dave Caldwell, and he just stayed one way. But Kell can box southpaw, but he's just more comfortable doing it one way. So as a trainer, you learn all different styles and systems, and you pick what works and you throw away what doesn't. And you can't be so arrogant and say this is my style's the best and it beats everybody, because it doesn't. But as a trainer, you've got to develop. And, you know, Brendan watched loads of stuff from the days of Orchard Moore, Sugar Ray Robinson, who had dancing lessons, you know, so many different styles, and realised that footwork was the key. And when Roy Jones, my dad used to watch all these videos of Roy Jones and all the other fighters, and you pick bits up and you practice it and see if it works in the gym. That's what a trainer, you've got to use innovation. That's what you've got to do.
I'm just curious, can you remember anything your dad's saying specifically about Roy?
Yeah, I just said this particular move, what he did, we call it back legging and front legging, and he was showing us all. And you know, I think at the time it was a long time ago, but he got some videos sent over from America.
VHS tape.
Yeah, VHS tapes, and watching that, and somebody said, "Keep it. Watch this guy coming through," and he studied stuff. Brendan, he watched lots of videos of old school fighters, and years before that.
Do you remember him I'm assuming he used to walk into the house and he's there watching tapes?
Yeah, he just watched boxing. That's it. He very rarely watched TV. He watched boxing videos or stuff on boxing, or read books on boxing. That's all he ever did. Brian Hughes from Manchester, who trained the likes of Michael Gomez and Anthony Fornell and Pat Barrett.
Yeah.
Brian Hughes used to come to this gym with reels of boxing films, and they put a screen up, and they put the old tape films on before they had it, and they watch old boxing fights, and people come in and watch it. That's how far it goes back. So they were all boxing mad because you couldn't get the stuff. People these days, fans, they're spoiled with the content that they can watch, because you had to really dig it out to find the good stuff. So, you know, it goes back a long way. So, like I say, he's a good coach. And Roy Jones was trained by his father. I think they had a fallout at some point. But, you know, I also used to watch his fights and see him, and he was built like a tank, and the speed of him. And you just thought nobody's ever going to beat him. I mean, obviously, back end of his career, when he took fights, he probably shouldn't, you know, Macronelli beating him in Russia when he was way past his best. But, you know, up until that point, what a fighter he was.
Definitely so. And that leads me on to Mr. James Bond himself, Pierce Brosnan. But before I ask you anything about him, I'm just curious, did your dad know who Pierce Brosnan was? Did you watch the James Bond movies?
Well, another interesting story, because obviously boxing is all about stories, and I didn't know this, but Pierce Brosnan was actually in Wales when Naz beat Steve Robinson.
Oh, wow.
Believe it or not.
What, in the crowd?
Yeah, because I think the time he was playing James Bond was the time when Naz won, I think 90s, 93, 94, whatever it was. And he was there. And interestingly enough, his middle name's Brendan. What a coincidence.
Oh, wow. So, Pierce Brendan Brosnan?
Yeah.
Well, that's a mouthful.
Yeah. So... But I always remember a story when they went to America, because Naz was fighting Kevin Kelly and I was training Ryan Rhodes for a fight against Otis Grant. So they'd all gone to America and there was just me and Ryan Rhodes in the gym. Everybody else had gone. And John came back, and what a fight that was. And obviously all these stars have come into the changing room to see Naz. So Brendan sat here. Naz is facing him, getting his hands bandaged, and Brendan's here, Naz is there, looking over Brendan's shoulder. And he went, Brendan, he went, James Bond. And my dad looked round, he went, James Bond, where? Naz, he went, that fella, James Bond. He went, that's not James Bond. Sean Connery's James Bond. He just carried on taping his hands up. And everybody started laughing in the room, because James Bond stopped with Sean Connery and Roger Moore for my dad. And obviously the next big one was, he had a big gap to fill, Pierce Brosnan, didn't he? My dad he only ever watched James Bond with Sean Connery. He didn't watch TV after that. And when Pierce came the other day, we were talking about that conversation. He says, yeah, he says, I remember that. He says, walking into the changing room, and he says, I was on a high, I was, top of my career. He says, and Brendan Ingle turned around and went, yeah, that's not James Bond. And it kind of sunk me and leveled me a little bit and grounded me. And he says, it was good. At the time, because it just made me realise that not everybody knows who I am or what I'm doing. and he says it makes you reset and think about where you are. He says and there was no agenda with Brendan. It was just like, it's not James Bond as far as I'm concerned. So it was an interesting story, and then for him to roll up again. So he came to Naz's world title fight. They saw him again in America for Kevin Kelly, and then he's rolled up at the gym, playing my dad in this film.
That is absolutely mental. That I didn't know that, and I wasn't expecting you to tell me that. That's fast. I'm sure everyone that's listening to this right now will be thinking that listening to it with a smile on their face, because that's a fascinating story, because 30-40 years on he's going to play the lead role in a movie about your dad, playing your dad, which is bonkers.
It's interesting because he's 70. He's a fit 70 as well. We walked up the hill.
I tell you what, that video we put out the other day, it's done 200,000 views in 24 hours. Everyone's going on about the handshake. Obviously, I shook his hand. The guy's strong. Yeah,
he's strong, but I think people like to read into stuff like he was trying to, impose himself and whatever, and there was a bit of ego involved, but there was no ego involved. And when you talk to him, to be honest, you wouldn't know that he was this big movie star, And it's funny because he said to me when I said, "Where are you living now, Pierce?" He went, "Oh, Malibu." He says, "And we've got a house in Hawaii. And we're outside Naz's shop." He went, "What about you?" I went, "Yeah, I still live here." And he went, "You're like kind of, oh, right," as if to say, "What, you live here? You still live here?" I went, "Yeah, we still live in the same place." He went, "Wow." As if to say, "Well, you've made money and you've had success. Why are you still living, just where we are?" But it was funny because it was a conversation stopper.
It was. I think the fascinating part was, like you said, he's they're obviously researching stuff we've done with Tony and the background to your dad in Dublin. So it was fascinating to know that they've been watching some of the stuff we've been filming over the last couple of years, and they're going to use that as part of research into your dad.
We phoned Tony on FaceTime. And
just to update on Tony's health as well.
Yeah, he's got heart and lung failure. So he's on an oxygen tank, and they're doing the best they can. He's still talking and moving. So I'm hoping to go and see him in a fortnight. Not this weekend after I'm going to pop over. But I FaceTimed him. And it was funny because he doesn't usually answer, but he did this time. And he's picked the phone up, and the first person he sees is Pierce Brosnan. And he's like, you can see, and then he messaged me after saying, "Oh, unbelievable." But, Tony was one of the closest to Brendan. So there's a lot of, stuff he could get off Tony, insights into how Brendan was and his character. You can see with Pierce, he showed me the photos, how they'd done him up as Brendan with the wispy hair and or the bald head or whatever, and the glasses. And it's a really good image to see. It looks, really like Brendan. It's uncanny, really.
The movie's called Giant, and obviously they've done a public release on it, so there's some information online. But from my understanding, it's obviously about your dad, his story, about the work he's done with the fighters in the gym. I saw the guy that's going to play Naz in the movie as well, some young Egyptian kid who looks resembles Naz. So are they going to have like other fighters featured as well, like Johnny and Harold?
To be honest, I don't know what they're going to do, but I just know it's about the fighters that Brendan brought through. And although one of the biggest successes was Naz, there was so much more to it than just Naz. So I think they're going to kind of take that angle, that it looked below the surface. There was this big superstar, Naseem Hamid, who started off from a kid, but there were so many other fighters in the background coming through, and so many people who helped Naz get where he was. And the story, even after Naz left, the story continued, and it still continues. We're still here in the gym, the same lines on the floor, the same original flooring. From when Naz first walked in, everything's the same. It's a little bit tidier. I remember one time a film crew came in to do a boxing film, and they came up and they were really disappointed because we'd put paneling on the wall, and all the green mold and dust and rubbish what was there when Naz was there has all been covered up, and they wanted an authentic boxing gym. I said, "Oh, we had to tidy it up for health and safety reasons." So that's the only thing what's changed, but basically the same setup, the same beams, the same bags, the very same ring. It's been there nearly 30 years since Errol Graham was training. It's the same. So
filming's going to start in the next week or so?
Well, the film is starting tomorrow. Is starting tomorrow. They've got different venues and locations. There's probably going to be some done in this gym. They've got the cast sorted out. We've got some extras from the kids from the gym going in it. They started this off about 1.5 2 years ago, doing it, and then put it on hold. So they've got kids who they cast for parts and stuff. So it's basically ready to go. And I think they said it's only going to take 6 to 8 weeks.
Would you want to be in it?
Well, I said that, I think they're going to get The Rock to play me, and my brother John. I think they're going to get Vin Diesel.
I thought the Vin Diesel would be you, wouldn't
No, The Rock. But somebody said he's not as aggressive as me, so they might have to change it now. But it'd be interesting. But I don't think we're going to be in it. We could. I don't know what they're going to do. It's not something I particularly want to do. I think they're going to maybe get somebody to portray us as kids. But it's not something I'm particularly bothered about. It's more to do with Brendan. It's not really my gig. When I look back over boxing. And people say to me, whether they think it winds me up, you'll never be good as you did as a trainer. I say, yeah, it's never going to happen. I'm not interested. It was never my interest to be better than my dad. We got dragged into boxing because it was a family business, me and John. And my nephew Luke was doing the same thing. Brendan loved boxing. It was his life and soul. For us, it was one of those things. It's a family business. We didn't love it as much as he did because it was a vehicle what got him out of Ireland in a very poverty-stricken place. And listen to Pierce Brosnan as well. It's the same. He was brought up in Ireland. He was brought up by the Christian Brothers, which were the same people who brought up my dad in education. It was a hard regime. His dad cleared off when he was a kid. His mum had to go and work in London. He was brought up by his grandparents. He had a reason, to get out of that place and make a name for himself. And that's a very similar story to Brendan. And, Pierce has done remarkably well. The films, he's made a fortune. He's a top actor. And it's a great, privilege to have him, portraying my dad, because who else could you get? He's Irish. His middle name's Brendan. He comes from Ireland. He comes from a poverty-stricken background. And he's a really grounded fellow. There's no ego about him. He's just, you wouldn't know if you were talking to him that we've had people who've been famous and, not even in the same level as him. And they've got an arrogance about him, but he's just a down-to-earth fella. And when you talk to him, you can, he's got a lot of experience.
I definitely back from the few minutes I spent around him. That's the vibe I got as well. And you promised us some access to when they start filming. I know you're going to be going across. You've been invited across to watch some of the filming. So you promised me that I'm going to be allowed to watch.
So when you came outside the gym and we were all stood out there, it's funny because when we stood outside the gym, a kid came running up the road who was a boxer from another gym, and he messaged me on Instagram. He went, I didn't realise Pierce Brosnan with your gym. I think you ran straight between us as we were on the pavement. I was stood with my back to the wall and Pierce. The kid ran between us. He didn't even too focused on his boxing. But when you walked up the road and you parked him and walked towards him, you could see the look on your face. Say, God, James Bond. That's the kind of presence. And how many people will have gone past that day and thought, I'm sure I've just seen Pierce Brosnan outside the Ingle Gym. When you think the people it's had over the years, David Beckham, Frank Skinner, snooker, Stephen Henry, Ronnie O'Sullivan. There's been so many people in this gym. It just attracts Danny O'Donoghue from The Script. We've had so many famous people come in this gym over the years. It's like it just attracts people because everybody likes a good fight. Especially when Naz was here, there were famous people rolling up every week to see Naz training. And he never stops. So when people stop having Sheffield, you get them coming to this gym purely because of its reputation and what Brendan did.
Amazing. Dom, I think it's going to be fascinating when the movie comes out, because you've seen from the response from that one Instagram post, which has gone ridiculously viral, people commenting on it, and I think the whole boxing world is going to be looking forward to it.
Well, my DMs have gone mad. I've had aspiring actors and people from around me, oh yeah, can I get a piece in the film? So it's funny who comes out of the woodwork when they see somebody like, people are saying to me, how on earth has Pierce Brosnan ended up in the gym in Winkerbank, of all places.
From Malibu to Winkerbank.
Yeah, from Malibu to Winkerbank and back, So it's good. Be interesting.
It is. We'll look forward to seeing how that goes. Anything else, Dom, before I let you go?
No, I think that's about it. We had a guy box last night in Rotherham. Yeah, Red Johnson, knockout. A good win, good stoppage. He's really developing there as a fighter. He's got some good power. He's doing a lot of training with my nephew Luca.
I understand Luca's getting a pro license.
Yeah, he's getting his pro license next week.
How old is he? 18.
18. So at least we're gonna have
massive shoes to fill.
Yeah, well, it is. But the thing is, he's got just like we did. We had a good mentor in Brendan. We were kind of, when I look back now, I think that without even realising, I think I was getting groomed to be doing this job. I didn't realise at the time it was, just do me this and just do me that. I was never that interested in being a trainer. I was more of a participant when I boxed or played football at school. But you kind of just fall into the role. And it's the same with Luke. He's kind of got a natural ability for doing it. He's got a good eye for it. He's keen. He watches everything. It's just like we were as kids. And he's got the enthusiasm, and we've taught him on the pads. He's picked it up. He's training Brad Goldsmith, Red Johnson, Mo Saban alongside me. He's learning. He's wanting to know all the stuff, and you've got to pass it down, because the stuff that you learn, what I learned off Brendan, what I developed myself, it's got to go somewhere else. My kids aren't particularly interested in boxing.
So it goes back to your granddad.
Yeah, it goes back to my granddad. It's passed down, innit? And the thing is with this is you've got to have an interest in it. It's no good trying to do it because you think you're going to be famous or you're going to get money. Because in this day and age, I wouldn't advise anybody into getting into being a boxing trainer. People message me, I want to be a boxing trainer. I'm thinking of packing up my job. What do you advise? I went, don't pack up your job. Because good trainers these days cost a lot of money, and they're not going to do it for free. And the ones who are coming through just haven't got the experience to be dealing with, fighters and bringing them through to the top level. They're going to earn the money. So he's got a good starting position. Luca, he's learning. He's doing the amateurs. He's putting on shows. He's learning. He's been in the corner. So he'll be the next one coming through, and doing all this and bringing the next generation of fighters through from Sheffield. So I think we're good for another 20 years.
Well, we'll see when the time is ready. We'll get him to make his debut on interviewing. So yeah, let him. I'm sure he sits back and watches a lot of these interviews. So when the time is right, we'll get him on camera. Congrats with Red Johnson. It was an impressive right hand what you did last night. So other than that, Dom, appreciate your time as always, and let's see how close you are with the predictions, because you've picked a massive 7-1 landslide to Frank Warren.
Well, they might be miles off, but realistically, Who cares?
Right. Dominic Ingle, as always, brutally honest. Podcast episode 3 is done. Before I go, what I'm going to do in the next episode is I want to open it up to the fans. So if people want to ask any questions for Dom, we'll have a little fan section where people can chuck in some questions. Just write it in the comments of this video.
What we should probably do actually is do a joint online Instagram, whatever they do. Instagram, not live, but maybe Instagram questions.
Yeah.
Do that.
I've got this crazy idea of having you and Tyan Booth doing like a sit down together, because it's two opposite worlds, opposite opinions. It'd be fascinating. Because I think he's different in front of you than he's
different in front of me. But like I say, I think I had enough of him when he boxed. He's he's a one-off. I always remember taking him to Canada as an opponent. It was an hard fight, and he boxed this kid who had only lost one, and he absolutely boxed out of his skin. And put on a fantastic performance, but he was doing his usual weird stuff. Couldn't find him for the weigh-in, couldn't find him to feed him after the fight, banging on his door. There were nobody. I had to get the maid to open his room, and he's laid on his bed with his headphones in. I fell asleep. So stupid. I just thought it could be no worse start for a fight. And when he beat the guy's manager the next day wanted to take us out for breakfast, and Tyan had it in his mind that because he beat this kid, that this fella was going to, poison him. That's why would he take us out for breakfast after beating he got a few quid, this fella. Why would he take us out for breakfast when I've just beat his guy? I think he's going to poison me. I'm not eating. And I can see Tyan picking and messing about with his food, and I'm eating it, and he's looking at me saying, "You're not eating that. We're not going to survive." And that's the kind of his mindset.
Yeah, he's a unique individual. I think the fans are going to love what we've got coming up in the next couple of weeks or so. We've filmed a series of Prince Patel and Tyan Booth abroad, which we're going to announce in the next few days, and I think people are going to love what's coming from that. But yeah, Dom, as always, appreciate your time, and dropping your questions in the comments section, and we'll ask Dom next time. Thank you.